So welcome to Double D Do Business, and I'm Dave Evans, and this is
Debbie Halls-Owens.
So Debbie, we're not live today. We're doing the recording with Eric Swick from Denver, Colorado. Eric, who was with us recently as well on RLC CPA Tuesday. So Eric, say hello, sir.
Hello.
That was almost.
That was a nice hello.
That was orchestral, wasn't it? I think. So today we want to really put some focus back into the world, and anyone who's listening to our podcast here on Double D Do Business, we all know we are hugely affected by what's going on around the world, that virus beginning with C. Today though, we want to focus on three different C's, back to our core podcast principles of consult, coach and create. In fact, it's coach, consult and create.
Did you hear the Debbie side then, Eric? That
yes.
Up?
Now, Eric, just tell us about what is it you spend your time doing at the moment?
So I spend my time really working with business owners and helping them, especially right now through this crisis, more from a financial perspective. But also I take the personal side as well, where I just help be a set of ears to listen to them, because a lot of people are scared, they're concerned about the impact this is going to have on their business. So I listen to them, and then I give them the best advice I can possibly give them. So
that's tremendous. And let's step back in time a little bit. You've been doing that for a very long time now, the current circumstances to one side, and you have an accolade, don't you? You're one of these entrepreneurial consultants who's also sold a company. And
yes.
therefore, Debbie has built a company too. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, I had a CPA firm for about 18 years, focused on working with small to medium-sized business owners, providing accounting, tax, business advisory services, payroll. And I sold that back in May of 2018. I'm still helping out the firm. I do business development for them, so I'm still doing sales there. But I've also have a new company called Swick Business Strategies, which is where I really focus on working with business owners and coaching them and consulting with them.
That's tremendous. I mean, Debbie, I can't imagine what it's like to work somewhere for 18 years, can you?
No, not you. But no, I think it's really interesting, because I think, well, we'll explore more about the transition of building to selling as well, because I think it's an incredible story for people to listen to and right now. But I also think for us as a generation, it's very different, is that you weren't a lifer as such. It's very transient now. People move from job to job to job. There is a word for it, but it's deleted me for now.
Yeah, I actually, prior to me even owning the CPA firm, I actually worked in private industry for 20 some years. And I only worked for two different companies during those 20 some years. And so I took a very unique path than most CPAs do. I got practical experience before I got into the public sector. And so I always felt like I had a lot of practical experience. I had a lot of finance, accounting, management responsibilities when I was in the corporate world. And so I bring that to my clients, because it's all scalable. I work for large companies, but it's all scalable to the small business owner. So I also bring that perspective along with being a business owner and having grown a business from, maybe $1 million to a couple of $1 million in revenue. So got a lot of experiences.
So 18 years also tells us that you would have traded through the last economic downturn.
Yes. Oh yeah.
How does today compare to that?
So that economic downturn, it's funny you say that, because the accounting firm had a niche in the restaurant industry. So what we found in the first economic downturn in 2008-9, that it really didn't impact them that much, because people still went out and ate because they don't want to cook, right? This is different. This is impacting every business. The previous ones impacted, we had architects, we had construction businesses. They were really hurt in that economic downturn. This time, it's not sparing anyone. I was telling someone a story yesterday. For instance, I have a laundry service that comes and picks up my button-down shirts to clean them and launder them. I'm not wearing button-down shirts these days, and I'm sure a lot of people aren't. So it's impacting that business, which you wouldn't think would be impacted, because, people still need their laundry. But habits are changing, so it's impacting everyone. And that's what I see probably the biggest difference this time.
And I think that's where we've all could be really naive, because I think there's something really interesting. Somebody mentioned about what you just highlighted is, that's one industry that you wouldn't even consider, the laundry business. The other one is garden centres. And because we're all social distancing or we're isolating, we're not actually going out. Well, those are living, breathing things, a bit like your restaurant. There's a perishable stock that goes with it. So therefore, there's an even bigger economic impact, isn't there? So it's been really fascinating. And I think, like you said, the blended experience of real corporate world and then transitioning into something which is a very different world. Like you said, the private sector from public to private is very different. What's the biggest thing that you learned from moving from private to public that you could translate as well now?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is going from the public segment to what I'm doing now. I don't have as many clients that I'm dealing with, so I'm more in depth with the clients that I work with. I feel like I know these clients on a personal basis more so. I get to know them better. I understand what's important to them, what scares them, concerns them, what keeps them awake at night. Those are the kind of things that I try to get at. When you're running a firm where you've got hundreds of clients, it's very difficult to get that intimate with every single client. Although I felt like I did a pretty good job of doing that and had great relationships with most of the clients, it's just hard to do that with everyone. In my current role with my consulting clients, it's very different. I know all about their families. I know all about what makes them tick. I know very much about their business, every aspect of it. I'm not just focusing on the financial aspect of their business. It's the HR side of it. It's the production side of it. It's the marketing. It's all of it. It's the whole business focus.
Is that not something that we could actually learn from right now? Because somebody said to me the other day, it's as though we're being forced to go back to basics. And the most basic thing that has been lost in corporate in world is that person-to-person relationship.
Yeah.
We've become
absolutely
disconnected, haven't we? And I think the ability to, we're being made to realise actually that is what's important. Whereas, we can either become a number or a perceived number in a larger business, not because the business is doing anything wrong, it's just volume. But the other side of that is those businesses will prosper and will prosper again by building better, healthier awareness, understanding, like you said. And actually, why aren't we collaborating across every single part of the business? Why don't I know if I'm in a corporate business? Why don't I know what marketing is doing and actually having a more knowledge of it? And I think that's one of the things that for me is a genuine positive that can come out of this.
I wrote about it earlier in the blog about this blind ignorance that we've all been able to have for quite a long time about all types of things. You're giving the corporate example. It can be corners of society. It can be something broken in your community that you walk past. And this is the time for us to all look differently, think differently, and act differently. I have one more question about that period in Eric's life, about coming out of the accounting firm, setting up your consulting business, and acknowledging your successful corporate career beforehand. How did you cope, though, from having a structure, having a corporate business? Can you remember and recall what it was like going to be in the number one, and the number one being, there's nobody else, it's you? Yeah. What's that like then, and what's it like today?
What's very different to me is in the previous one, I had a staff. We had over 20 employees at the firm. So everything wasn't dependent on me. I could delegate things, and that's how I ran my business. I didn't work in the business. I didn't prepare tax returns. I ran the business. I managed people. I managed, the finances for the business development side. That's all I did. Today, doing the consulting, I have to do everything. I don't have anyone to turn to say, hey, can you handle this? Or you take this over. So a lot of it's on my shoulders, but I love that. I love that because I'm learning new things as well. A great example of that is, it's enabled me to do this video conferencing. Look, we're across an ocean from each other, and I feel like we're right there together, right? And I'm doing a lot more of that with prospects and clients. In fact, today I have a prospect that I'm going to be talking to. We're doing a video conference. Doesn't mean the world has to come to a standstill just because of this ugly virus. So you could still have that, and seeing people and seeing facial expressions, you know, that's really helpful, right? Because you can see maybe they're not connecting with you, whereas on a phone it's hard to see that.
Yeah.
And so you know, body language to me is a very important thing, facial expressions, things like that. So yeah, I've changed a lot of things that I'm doing and how I interact with people, partly because of this virus, but also because, you know, I don't have a huge staff that's helping me.
I remember I was lucky enough to see your PASBA farewell. So the Professional Association of Small Bookkeepers and Accountants.
Business accountants.
Yeah, there you go. I have to say that your farewell was pretty impressive to that membership body, and the presentation they did on stage, and how they really captured the way you run your business and your character, your personality. I mean, that must have felt good too, right?
Yeah, you know, there's a couple of things. It felt great. I mean, I love that group. I mean, I've developed lifelong friends out of that group. It's a great professional organization. So, you know, yeah, it meant a lot to me. You know, a lot about my character and who I am, you know, it's just the way I was raised. You know, I always tell people that one of the key things I live under is the golden rule that, you know, I'm going to treat people how I want to be treated. And it's important to me. That's just the core value. And some people don't agree with that. That's fine, but that's what's important to me.
Do you know, though, it's an interesting fact. The golden rule is present in every doctrine of every religion, belief system around the world. Even the Mayans believed in it. So there might be a slight tweak of the language, but the essence of the message is exactly the same. So, you know, unlike the Mayans, anyone who doesn't believe in that rule really must be slightly alien, Debbie, right?
Right, so the only thing, Eric, as you know, I like a good challenge and a good debate and discussion. So I recently have been having similar discussions around the linguistics around treating others as the way you want to be treated. And I think in today's society, we've got to be very careful because we can generalize and we can also assume what somebody else wants. So I think it's being very conscious, and for me this is really important, is that I don't assume that somebody might want to be treated the same way as me, but what I am doing is exactly what you said. It's the core ethical value is I care. I'm representing and presenting myself that I genuinely care. I might not get it quite right, you know, and I think the life of a coach and a consultant, you go through that cycle a lot, don't you, because you are sharing and guiding and nurturing and you know, cajoling sometimes somebody to see a different perspective. And I think
you know, it's funny you bring up that word care, because that is the word I use most of the time, and that's how I've been described. It's funny because I often, when people would ask me when I owned the firm, you know, well, tell me about your organization, and the first thing I always talk about is that my people care. They care about me, they care about the firm, and they care about the clients they work with. And that word care means so much. It's so powerful.
I think it is. I think it encapsulates a lot. And I think people are suddenly realizing how important it is. You know, we saw a few posts, and we've actually put it out as one of our own, but shared some Canadian people had started it, and it's called caremongering. So looking at what is currently scaremongering and that fear, underlying fear that we all feel. You know,
delete the S.
But delete the S and then caremongering. And it's such a warm way of being able to kind of just spread kindness and awareness that, you know, we don't know what somebody else is going through, but guess what? I'm here and I genuinely do care. What can I do to help? And I think that's the big message about what we do as coaches and consultants. We genuinely care.
Yeah. And it's a very interesting perspective as well, Debbie, isn't it? Because you care even though you're not in the seat with the accountability, the responsibility of the business. You do care. You do look to give that extra value and impact. Now, last year we were very, very delighted that you joined us on the RLC Consult team at Swick Business Strategies. Really thrilled about that. Talk us through how you found transitioning into full-time consulting. So I know you still help with a firm today. That's great. But what is it about consulting you really enjoy, Eric?
You know, a couple of things. Number one, it's the ability to just hear people's stories. You know, because I've met with a lot of people. Not everyone becomes a client, obviously, for whatever reason. But just learning about their stories, I love that aspect of it. Once again, because I'm a caring type person, so yes. I like to hear it. But it's also when someone tells you, I haven't really ever thought of it from that perspective. Thank you for that. You know, it's helping them broaden their thinking, helping them open their minds to different ways of looking at things. I think is helpful. I'm just thinking of one of my particular consulting clients that I'm working with, and he's a brilliant guy and very creative guy, but I think sometimes he has difficulty letting go and letting his team really help him run the business. He gets too into micromanaging, so I'm helping him with that process and seeing the growth of his leadership team as he kind of backs away. That's what's exciting. And it's not because of anything I'm doing, it's just getting him to think a little bit differently.
That's fantastic. Let's ask the same question in the classic season 1, Double D Do Business. So Debbie, what about you? What do you like about consulting?
Do you know, one of the briefs, just for anyone listening, as you know, Eric, one of the briefs was not Dave not to cast one of his lines over to me and make me just answer ad hoc. So genuinely about coaching. So for me, I love knowing that somebody comes back to you several years later and says, do you remember when you said this to me? And I recently had an ex-manager of mine, and he came back to me, an incredible man, and very, very driven and focused and orientated himself. He was already very dedicated. But the stuff that he came back about and the learnings and the language, and he just repeated it all back, and it was just, to me, that's the reward of a
Was
coach.
That from 2014?
It was from 2012.
2012. Holy.
So yeah, so he and just knowing that at those times, because even, you know, as a coach or a consultant, we have a wealth of knowledge. That's the reason why we do what we do. We have different experiences, our own stories, so we relate. And also, we're continuously learning from our clients, which is an incredible relationship. It's not one-sided, it's a very two-way. So for me, it's the reward of knowing that somebody's benefited from the coaching and the relationship that you've had. And secondly, it's also the continuous learning that you put through. You are kept on your toes all the time being a coach and consultant. There is no day to bait it.
Absolutely.
Well, I have a similar story. It's interesting, but this relationship goes back to the early 80s.
Wow.
And I've known him since then, and we're actually good friends, but he recently came out of the corporate world and is wanting to do some consulting work. So he and I have connected, and I'm helping him with coaching him a little bit on how to do this consulting work. And so, because he's been in the corporate world his entire career. And so it's interesting. So I've had that same type of thing where he's come back and, you know, he said some things to me about how he just has always admired my leadership and what I did. He actually worked for me for a while as well in the corporate world. So we've had that. I helped him with his career moving on to another opportunity. And so, you know, it's really rewarding to see that and have that come back around. So, yeah.
Eric, when you share this episode with your network, Double D Do Business, if you know Eric Swick at Swick Business Strategies in the local Denver area, you really must meet him for a coffee to find all about the best version business framework and how even right now he can help transform your business. So let's move into coaching. Now, I asked you a different question. So on that note, I think I should ask Debbie to answer the correct question, Eric, don't you think? What do you think? What's your favorite about consulting?
Oh, consulting. Well, first is the distinction between the two, because a lot of people think they're the same. So about consulting, it's much more advisory. So I see consulting as advisory, coaching as guiding and nurturing. So the difference I like is giving people the structure and the process of creating success for themselves, and that's the bit I enjoy. So it's the how. I actually had a conversation with somebody this morning. It was what in life we know lots of whys we should do something, we know lots of what we should do, but the bit that we really struggle with is how am I actually going to do this? And the other bit we miss out is what if this happens? What if that happens? We can't predict everything. Nobody 6 months ago would have predicted COVID-19 and the global impact it's had. But we could have said, what if, my business failed? What if I was too successful? What if I grew too fast? And I think those are the bits for me in consulting, is allowing somebody a structure of how, and also allowing them to have a broader perspective on what ifs are possible or not possible.
Love it. So good to know that about Debbie, Eric, isn't it? Other than interesting fact, I do believe a pandemic was predicted in about 3 different books. And even in a movie.
Yeah,
but
it's not the same.
I know it's not the same. No, absolutely not. So let's talk about the power of creating. Now, creating in RLC terms is about finding solutions, embracing ideas, finding out, like you just said, Debbie, what the answer to the what if questions are. And I guess, Eric, if we look at your business today, how important do you think is it to business owners, and we'll go to Debbie next as well, to embrace the what if question, both right now and in normal trading conditions? Because this is not a crisis question, is it? What are your thoughts about that, Eric? Go ahead.
So, the what if, I think, is really critical, and something I've practiced for years, because one of the things we always told our clients is, hey, if you're about to make a business decision, come to me, let's talk through it first, because there's always multiple paths that you can take, and each one is going to have maybe some varying outcome, but let's at least talk through it so that you go into that decision with the most knowledge to make a good decision. That's one thing I think of. I forget what you were asking me, what the rest of it was.
I have to say though, you've made a really great call out, and that is sometimes, if you think about the call we shared together recently on the CPA Live about being hasty in crisis conditions, being rash. This is about getting an informed bit of advice, isn't it? A clear review.
I think one of the examples I gave the other day to somebody when I was consulting and creating with them was that having the third party element, i.e. us as coaches and consultants, is that if you imagine we're playing the chess game, so we're looking at the chessboard and we can see everything really clearly. Whereas as the person who has come for advice is on the chessboard and sometimes can only see a limited view. And it's because we're so proud of what we do as a business owner, or we can get very narrow-minded, and sometimes that brings limited beliefs and lots of different confusion. So having that third party is really important, and we were talking to many people over the past few weeks in regards to people say, well, I might have to step back from my coaching and consulting, and we're saying, so at a time of most need, you want to step away from it. This is when you should be embracing it more.
Absolutely.
And you should be
But I'll take a little bit different twist on this, because the other thing that I see with working with business owners is a lot of times they know their business. They know what they should be doing, but it's no one's holding them accountable. And therefore they don't move, right? So I think there's that role that I play where I also hold people accountable to say, okay, we made a decision. Now, have you done what you said you were going to do? Because I have worked with so many business owners that have wonderful minds and great ideas, but it's getting them implemented, because there's so many distractions that you get as a leader, as an owner of a business. And so I think that's where, from a coaching, consulting perspective, where I feel I add value is just helping them get off that dime sometimes and really get things implemented.
That's a good call. Get off that dime. And I think it's a really good perspective, although I do have to ask Debbie a question, Eric, because I have an assumption.
Sorry, Debbie.
I have an assumption.
There we go, Eric.
Can you play chess?
I can play chess.
Are you any good?
I used to be really good.
Did you?
Yeah.
We're going to have to find out if that's true, Eric, aren't we, by getting a chessboard?
Yeah, I used to play chess.
How good she actually is.
I was in the chess club at school, may I say.
Were you really?
Oh, wow.
I was a real nerd, me. Something day a while back, but I was really nerdy. I always sat on like the periphery of all the friendship circles, so I was never in demand or never felt demanded on. And I was, I'd be the one in the library, but I was quite a geek.
I was in the school tennis team on newspaper photograph day.
Yeah, but you weren't in the tennis team.
No, I never played for the school, but
but you're in the picture.
In the records, I'm in the team.
You turned up on the photograph.
Yeah, I think there was a North of Scotland rugby side that was similar. So we had, I can't remember what the name of the team was. A new rugby team started in New Elgin, and it was done by some military guys. And I was invited along as a rook, as like a, what would you call it? Not rookie, but as a ringer. Right? I was there as a ringer.
Yeah.
And the papers turned up. And there's this picture of me in the press going, this new team's coming together. I got 3 or 4 phone calls going, what are you playing for them for? It was just photograph day. Anyway, the best time to turn up for any team in the world. Right?
Yeah, it's photograph day.
Now then, the fascinating thing there about this conversation is if we bring it all the way around full circle to today, I think this is a time, you said it earlier, whether it's coaching, consulting, or even creating, it's definitely collaborating. And if I've learned something just this week, we talked about it the other day, optimize all your resources. I was speaking to someone we all know yesterday about solving some of their solutions in their business. Yep. And the admission was, I'm gonna have to get everyone in my team to do this, to pull this off. And how many times can you coach that message? Suggest it, read a book about it, watch a YouTube video, tell them yourself, send yourself an email. Do you then not do it? But when the circumstances force you, it's amazing what you'll pull off, isn't it? When the circumstances forces your hand. Yep. So Eric, is there any question you'd like to ask Debbie?
No, I'm not going to put her on the spot like you.
Thank you, Eric. My favourite podcast guest so far.
Debbie, is there anything else you'd like to ask Eric today before I just take us down one more area?
No, I think we've done pretty well. Or maybe I should have written more questions. I just did my summary stuff, and I really like the thing that you said about when we're creating and giving the accountability. So it drives behaviour change, habit change, language. Those are the things that as a coach and a consultant, you can really embed the change in the business, and that's really exciting.
I'd like to just give some kudos to you, Eric, for something else you shared this week, which was you were talking about caring for your people, but you also said a really important truth that might have gone missing in our live video together, which was people are going to need help getting back to work. Yeah. And actually, that is a fundamental issue that's not here today, but in a few months' time, few weeks' time, depending on how long that is, if you're not connected to your team right now, particularly with some of the generous social support that's available around the world in different countries, there's both am I scared to come back to work? Do I even need to? Yep. Is another question. So it's full of those what ifs again. And I know you haven't said that today, but I want to give you some kudos for that, because owners and firm leaders need to think about the importance of that connection, isn't it? Because you're going to have to ask somebody, in some cases, to come back to work for just 20% more versus staying at home.
Yeah. Because this physical disconnect that everyone has right now, you're missing out on that, just walking by someone's office and saying, how you doing today? They need that. People need that. So it's keeping that going even in this time.
Yeah, I agree.
So Eric, I'm just going to do a very quick summary about Double D Do Business.
He's looking at my notes to do that.
No, Deb's just going to do a bit of a general summarise too. Yeah, but before I wrap up the podcast, I want to just ask you, Eric, to have a think about what's the number one thing, you've got a bit of time to think about this, you'd like people to remember about Swick Business Strategy. So Debbie, a couple of highlights from you today.
Okay, so we coach, we consult, and we create. So and we've talked through each one of those, the differences, the nuances, and the value they all add. And one of the things that I put in here is the focus in the world is ask for help, ask for support. People are there to add value. It's not about just making a paycheck and paying somebody. People are willing to add value to you.
Yep.
The one thing that I loved, and which is a very RLC ethic, is what you said, Eric, in regards to we get to know people personally and professionally, and we got some great feedback the other day in reference to that's RLC's, as Dave calls it, magic sauce, but it's creating a balance of the two, because you can just focus so much on the professional, you forget the person, and actually bringing them together is the most powerful thing. And I think those are the best coaches and consultants out there, so thank you for that. And then the other one was the real relationships and understanding all the facets that come into it. And I suppose my very, very final summary is, remember the how and the what ifs. They're the most important. If you don't know them, go and find them and ask for help.
Thanks, Debbie. So this has been Double D Do Business today. We're going to go to Eric one more time in a second, talking you through some of the differences you can make in your business, whether you're coaching, consulting, or creating, or just determined to do a really good job. So Eric, what's the one last message you'd like people to remember about Swick Business Strategies from Denver, Colorado?
The thing I would say is that, I'm here, you taught me something that, it's about, you should listen like your life depends on it. I'm just here to meet people and listen to what's going on in their lives and their businesses, and no commitment. I'll share who I am and my background, and I just like to start a conversation.
Love it. Thank you, Eric. And if you're a fellow CPA firm owner in the local area too, and you're listening to this, sharing this with virtually anywhere in the world, Eric, you don't confine to zip codes, do you? So you can work anywhere now.
I can.
Love it. So
of course, with video you can do it, and then once I can get on a plane again, I'll do that too.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I love it. So Debbie, any final words?
Why do you do that? No, Dave, no.
You've been listening to Double D Do Business. This has been
Debbie Holmes-Evans.
And I've been Dave Evans. Every success with your learning.